passata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro,
Hello and welcome to this week's SP Weekly AC Milan podcast. I'm your host, Amit Paul, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Jason Brown. Jace, how you doing?
Very good, mate. Very good.
Good, man. And I'm also joined by Jack Cowlin. Jack, how's things?
Yeah, good, mate. I think it's a happier camp than last week, isn't it, when we're here? So, yeah, all good.
It certainly is, mate. It certainly is. Right, fellas, so plenty to talk about tonight. We'll have reaction to the win over Palermo, the Europa League race, concerns over Vincenzo Montella's future, and of course the preview of the Derby della Madonnina this weekend. But first, let's cast our eye back to last weekend at the San Siro. As Jack alluded there, complete contrast to the week before, the frustration at Pescara, 4-0 win over Palermo, and unlike last week, Milan were the superior team and they showed it. 4 good goals, convincing performance. Palermo never really threatened. It was all very, very comfortable. And yeah, a solid win, and coupled with results elsewhere, absolutely vital for that Europa League race. So no better way to get prepared for the Milan derby. Just to look at the sort of intricacies of the win, the biggest talking point to come out of it was the return of Suso from injury. Scored a brilliant free kick and then was also instrumental in the second goal, and just his general quality in the final third made a massive, massive difference to the team. So that was a definite plus point. And his fellow Spaniard, his good old mate on the other wing, Deulofeu, also grabbed himself a really good goal. Another criticism that Jack and both of you actually have sort of brought up in the last few weeks is just his general quality in the final third, that composure. I still think he was lacking that at times on Sunday, but it was one hell of a goal, and fingers crossed that gives him a little boost ahead of the Inter game as well. But boys, I just want to talk to you in depth about a certain aspect of the Milan squad. So we've grabbed Suso from Liverpool on a free. We've got Deulofeu on loan from Everton. One of the biggest criticisms that I read a lot on Twitter at the time of signing Deulofeu was just how some people thought Milan had fallen, and it was almost a case of look at them scrounging around, grabbing an Everton loanee, some guy on a free from Liverpool who couldn't make the cut at Anfield. And yeah, just a lot of people just giving some unfair criticism towards Milan, in my opinion. Jack, it's working out pretty well in terms of Suso. He's definitely stepped up to the plate this season and gone on another level. But what's your take on just looking at the sort of I wouldn't even describe them as lower level players, but just teams that can't make it elsewhere in Europe, but they seem to be thriving at Milan?
It's vitally important, isn't it? You know, when you haven't got buckets and buckets of money to spend and so forth, you have to be sturdy and sort of, you know, cunning in the transfer market and such. And there's so many young players in across the Europe and such that are in youth academies, and some that don't just quite make it. And, you know, and it's just a case of they're trying to break through in a team that has a superstar already in place in the position that they actually place. You know, you look at Suso when he was trying to come through, and obviously at Liverpool, and that there was plenty of good players already there. You know, Gerrard was still there, and they were still going out and spending quite a lot of money on people that they were hopeful would win them the title. You know, they're at a position where they were, you know, they're desperate to win that first league title in decades for them. So I think it's, you know, someone such as himself, it's just a case of, you know what, this is going to be tough for me to break through, so I might need to go elsewhere. And why is there any shame in taking people from that? You know, it's not like you've plucked him out of the youth team where he couldn't get in a team of some 5th division club or something like that. You know, Liverpool are a big team, and they have big money to spend and a large squad with lots of talent, and it's not possible for everyone to break through. I think just looking on sort of along the continent, you look at Chelsea, you've got sort of 20 odd players loaned out at the moment, and I guarantee you 70-80% of those are not going to end up at Chelsea. They'll end up elsewhere, and probably, a handful of them will be really sort of household names in time. And again, it's just about kind of getting your opportunities. So I think I can understand the sort of frustrations in terms of if that's your marquee signing, or if that's all, the only business you're doing. And I think probably for Milan at the moment, you can look at him, you can look at De La Fea, who are doing well, but you can also look at a couple of others that, are kind of okay players and not really sort of adding the skill and talent that you're after. So I think if those were sort of supplemented with larger signings, but you obviously went and spent a lot of money on Bakker and took that as sort of this is our, sort of marquee signing, our key guy who's going to be the goal scorer to drive forward, and we're just sort of complementing him with some young talent around. But no, I think it's crazy for clubs not to be thinking of looking around sort of youth teams and things like that and thinking, if we can get our hands on him, it'd be awesome. It happens all the time. It happens, and it's just the case of it gets highlighted more when a player such as Suso comes in and is all of a sudden a bit of a star player at Milan. People then, it's a bit more recognisable. But I think there's no shame in it. It's just not how you would want your entire transfer activity to be going down. I'm a huge fan of Moneyball. A bit of a shout out to my favourite author, Michael Lewis. But in terms of, when clubs are sort of looking at how can we add certain attributes to our squad without spending loads of money, and maybe if we, instead of spending 30 million on one player, if we can make 3 or 4, 7, 8, 9 million pound signings, then we could be stronger off as an outfit. And I think that's, Berlusconi has clearly said he's not diving into his pockets as much as he previously did over the last couple of years. And this is what you need to do. But as I said, long term, you would hope that there is a few more larger signings and then these guys come in and make some impacts. Just taking it back to our side a little bit, from Tottenham, we've signed Eric Dyer from Sporting Lisbon, who he's an English lad, but he's come up in the Portuguese ranks and such. And we've gone out and signed him, and seems a bit of a strange one. Nobody knows who he is. You're pushing to try and make yourself a force in the Prem, and everyone's a little bit, who's this guy? And he's been probably our most ever-present player in the last couple of years, playing right back, centre back, and defensive mid in the England squad, and as a surefire starter now, and a real bright prospect. And they work out. Sometimes they work out really well, sometimes they don't. But it's less of a gamble when you're taking youth players and giving them a chance to grow with you at lower wages and lower costs to initially purchase than they are if you go out and spend 25-30 million and there's still no guarantee it's going to work out. So I think everyone just needs to ease up and be a bit realistic again. And as we said, until you're back in that Champions League and a constant fixture fighting for the title, then this is most likely the way you're going to be doing your business.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it there in terms of it's not always going to work out. I think there are certain cases where you do strike it lucky with like the likes of Suso. Develops, give him time, give him regular sort of an important role in the team, and he'll shine and he'll repay your faith. So this is definitely working out. And I think I moaned last week after the Pescara result that it was plainly obvious that we were missing Suso, in particular his creativity. So for him to come straight back into the team, have that massive impact, it was very impressive and very reassuring moving forward. Jace, do you echo those thoughts? Just given the current situation Milan are in as well, they haven't really got much of a choice in terms of going out and spending big on top quality players. They've had to change their strategy, but cases like Suso, as we saw on Sunday, it can pay off at times as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned being tight on resources. You have to be wise with what you got, and I think the hierarchy at Milan have obviously looked at other kind of youth players and things and kind of tried to identify players who they feel can fit in with the squad. And they, like Jack says, they don't necessarily have to be, big names or worth a lot of money. You just need to look for the right players that have the right attributes. And I think Milan have done that successfully with Suso. And as you said, sometimes it does backfire, but we've seen it many times. Jack mentioned Eric Dyer. You look at Sacco for Palace, didn't work for him at Liverpool, and he's playing amazingly now, under new management, different system. It's working for him, and the same with Suso, didn't work at Liverpool, but he's come to Milan and, he's kind of the main guy guy there, and obviously him and Montella get along, and it's helping his game, and you just see him thriving. And I think it's something that, as players' prices go up astronomically, I think it's something that you're going to see more and more. Having to be a bit more savvy with the transfers. Look at Leicester, plucked Mahrez out of obscurity, and look what he did for them last season. Same with Jamie Vardy. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it, and Suso is a prime example.
Couldn't agree more. The management at Milan have got a lot of stick, and rightfully so. Adriano Galliani's been heavily criticised by supporters, media, everyone alike. Some of the dealings he's done, the loan deals and the sort of budget deals that he's done over the years, but not really out of choice. He's been forced into that situation, but I think credit where it's due as well for them to take the punt on Suso. It's clearly come on leaps and bounds this season. So
it's one of those, I'm sure every footballing director and everyone, would love an infinity pool to dip into, like a Man City or a Real Madrid, and just be like, I'm not really going to get this wrong because I'm going out and buying the fifth best player in the world for 70 million. It's not going to. Sort of everyone would like that, but you've got to work to constraints, and that is outlined by the owners. At the start of the season, they will sit down and they say, "This is our budget. This is our wage budget. Who's out there that we can look at?" And as I said, that's when you start needing to look further into the market and starting to find it. But everyone's just got to remember that all these players came from somewhere at some point. Your Kakars, your Shevchenkos, they weren't, born in Milan and sort of raised there and were always coming through the youth. All these players are sort of bought somewhere. And, if you're in that rebuilding stage, it's your safest bet in terms of, not putting your club in any great long-term, troubles by having a gamble at maybe 4 or 5 of them and hoping 1 or 2 become, top-notch players and such. And then you can get into a position where you can fund it. So, I find it hard to blame them, but unfortunately it's a bit of a lose-lose because as fans, we're always, you're always hoping deadline day, who's going to be our 30-40 million pound guy coming up, and usually it's not the case, is it? But I would say keep your Milan TV guy interviewing Suso as well, because that was the quickest goal in Serie A I think he scored. I think he came out and proved the point that he's definitely not looking past Milan at the moment, because hell of an impact on the weekend, which was really good to see. And like we spoke about so much last week in terms of lack of composure, and that to me he really brought that to the team, and sort of he scored the free kicks, unbelievable. I love those ones because it looks almost unnatural how it curls into the corner sometimes. But then I think the next one, obviously he gets the assist, and I think last week people would have had a shot or tried to take it past another man, whilst he just showed that composure, and I think he really settled the team down. And massive impact, and certainly looks like a great guy for you guys, and hopefully be there for many years.
Absolutely, fingers crossed. 2 other players I want to talk to you guys about. Let's start with Romagnoli in defence. We spoke about modern day defender and Paolo Maldini's comments a week or so ago. I'm going to make a big call in the sense that I think Romagnoli is destined to be one of the top defenders in Europe for many, many years. We've all seen the talent that he had when he first joined Milan. He had a good solid season at Sampdoria, and it was just a case of him gaining experience, gaining playing time, and just developing his all-round game to become one of the best in Serie A. I think we're seeing that, and I think again you can counter-argue that and say it wasn't exactly the most difficult games for him, given the opposition. Palermo were really, really poor, but defensively his reading of the game is top-notch. And if you're looking at the both aspects of it, we're talking about his distribution, his vision. He ticks a lot of boxes for me. And it's no surprise that Chelsea were sniffing around for him last summer, and the expectation is that they'll be back again for him this summer. But fingers crossed, Conte's left disappointed. But just want to get from your angle, is there other young defenders in Europe that you can think of that kind of fall into that same category? Jace, does anybody come to mind? And how much have you seen of Romagnoli in particular, and are you impressed by him as well?
Well, no one comes to mind immediately, but in terms of Romagnoli, obviously I've been watching AC a bit now. You've kind of got me onto them, so yeah, I've seen quite a bit of him now since we started talking about doing this podcast, really. And Yeah, I agree. He looks a top player. I mean, he's coming from a long line of top Italian centre backs. So I think he's probably got big shoes to fill. But so far, he's doing it. He's only young, 22 years old. Holding down starting place at AC Milan, and it's really, you say, it's up to him. I think obviously you don't want him to go to Chelsea, but playing under taking that step up might be good for him. Playing under a manager like Conte, experiencing the Champions League, different opposition, all that kind of will help him to grow, I think, as an individual. I know from an AC Milan point of view, we want him there at the club forever, but I think it depends on where AC are heading, because he's going to be a top player. It's whether or not AC will again be a top club and be able to hold on to such a great young talent.
Play with my emotions, JC. Staying. What are we talking
about? Sorry, mate. I'm just from the player's perspective. You don't want him to outgrow the club. The club kind of needs to grow with him.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. I think that was one of the biggest concerns last summer when Chelsea were interested. The rumours started swirling around. It was a case of, well, is he going to get his head turned? Premier League, Champions League, offering immediately rather than building a project with Milan? I don't know, but he's grown and Milan are improving, so fingers crossed he doesn't budge. And then Jack, I also wanted to discuss Bacca. I thought I was overly harsh on him with my player ratings from the Palermo game, because I gave him a 6 out of 10, even though he scored a good goal. But there were 2 opportunities in particular that he missed, which were really, really bad. And for a player of his quality, you'd expect him to bury those. And my point was, essentially, was that if he can't, sort of finish and take those chances, then what is he offering to the team? His attitude and his sort of overall involvement has improved in recent weeks, but just, did you see those missed opportunities? And a player of his sort of style, that poacher sort of goal, he's in the box looking to poach goals. If he doesn't score regularly, then is he almost a liability to the team?
Yeah, definitely. I think if he's not slotting at sort of 30-40% shot ratio, then I think you move on from him, because he's just not a striker that is creating his own chances or influencing games in any other way other than when he's scoring. So it's one of those, there's been plenty of strikers down the years that that their goal to games ratio actually looks quite good, but when you actually see the impact that they have on the performances and such, it's actually more negative than positive. And I just think for him, it's getting to that sort of case. And I just think you're just looking for more, aren't you? Especially as we keep saying about with all the youth around, you need your league guy to really be sort of galvanising and sort of leading by example. And I just don't think he is. He got the goal, as you said, on the weekend, but certainly should have had a couple more at least. And whilst in a 4-0 win, it doesn't come back to haunt you. Those have been happening as well in these 1-1s and these 0-0s and things like that. So, I do think, and I've said before that, certainly as the new ownership comes in and such, a striker's definitely probably at the top of the sort of search list when it comes to what you're going to do in the summer. And I just don't think he's I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he suits the sort of tempo that you want to play, the closing down style. And as I said, at the minute, if you're not burying a high percentage of your shot chances, and then you're not influencing the game. So, and that tends to be the case. So, what's it, 13 goals, I think, in the league or something along those lines, which, again, you look around the league and see what other strikers at your competition are putting away. It's hard to compete if you haven't got a league guy that's up there and up and around the similar sort of figures. So I do think it's time to move on from Bacca. And I would just say quickly on Romagnoli as well, just 2 points. I think when you mention sort of other young defenders and stuff across Europe, whenever I think of a young defender, I always think of Varane over at Real Madrid, who's he was someone that, maybe 3-4 years ago when he was really young, kind of came on the scene, and he really looked like he's obviously got that highlight tackle where he sprints back quicker than a cheetah or something and tackles Messi, but injuries have sort of hampered him a little bit. But there's not loads of the superstar centre backs come through, but I think there is, I think there are some good ones out there. And Romagnoli, I don't know if you think it's a fair assessment. You've seen more of him than myself. He does remind me a bit of Vertonghen, who's at Tottenham at the moment. Obviously, it's easy to say because they're both left-footed and such, but it's both so classy on the ball and such. You kind of always think, could you be a defensive mid? But then also actually capable, wins his aerial duels, doesn't shirk from a challenge and things like that. So, and Vertonghen for me is, in the Premiership, he's been amongst the best centre-backs for 4 or 5 years now. And I think Romagnoli has the potential to get to top, but at the same time, you need to keep the sort of defence around him and keep Donnarumma behind him to build a unit, because one good defender in a bad defence, unfortunately, doesn't come across as a good defender. It's one of those, you need the unit to be strong, but he's definitely a good building block for you for sure.
Definitely. That is a really interesting comparison, actually, because obviously the lazy ones are always Maldini, more so just in terms of positionally and stuff, and then obviously his idol is Nesta. So those kind of comparisons that have been made over the years, but the Vertonghen one's a great shout, and that's something I'm sure he probably studies and builds himself on as well.
Because Vertonghen can move to left back as well. They both have that ability. As I said, they could probably play centre back, left back, defensive mid, and do a really, really good job in all of them. I just see a bit of it in terms of he's not the most intimidating centre back in the world, but because he's got good footballing brain, good sort of leadership skills, clearly, that they're able to dominate their opponent using other attributes than obviously a few of the older centre backs might have used back in the day.
Definitely, no, absolutely, good shout.
And obviously Vertonghen's better than Maldini and Nesta. Shock horror. Never. Blasphemy.
That is absolute blasphemy. I'm going to ignore that. It's a good shout. And also, just to pick up on your point about just building that unit, I think that is the main sort of area of improvement for the summer. I think Milan have made no secret of sort of prioritising a central defensive partner for him to slot in next to him and replace Paletta for the long term. So.
What would you look for? Do you want a bit more of a stonewall sort of, blood and thunder sort of defender, or do you want a never sort of classy operator? What would be your idea?
Well, going from what I've seen this season, I think it would be better just to sort of get a better Paletta, if that makes sense. I think Romagnoli does that job of picking up possession, building from the back, and reading of the game, and everything's great. But just to have that sort of no-nonsense combination with someone next to him, I think that probably works better than having two sort of very capable players on the ball, but could find wanting defensively. But it'd be interesting.
Yeah. And any names? Do you know of anyone you'd want?
Not so much that I want, but the one name that keeps popping up is Villarreal defender Matteo Masaccio. I'm not sure if you guys have seen much of him. I personally haven't myself, so can't say.
We were linked with him a few years back, and all sorts of hype. He was really, really highly rated, and then he had if it's the same guy, had a really bad leg break.
That's him.
Yeah. So he had a leg break just, I think, a week or so before we were going to sign him or something like that. And but I remember at the time he was really highly rated. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing, everybody still rates him very, very highly. Milan have been linked with him since last summer when the takeover was supposed to happen and whatnot. But he seems to be still the top of the priority list. So.
You're going to go get Malaga after my tips, aren't you? We know the guys are listed in. So.
Absolutely, but so interesting times. But we'll see how Romagnoli gets on, and I'm sure, as Jack said, I think a replacement for Bacca is inevitable. I don't think it's he is the long-term sort of man to take that role up front, but we shall see. Just in terms of the weekend, it was almost a perfect weekend, to be honest. Lazio lost at Napoli, or at home to Napoli, should I say. Atalanta were held, and Inter were, sort of responsible for the most funniest result of the weekend, which was losing at Crotone, which was a absolute shock, but a very, very welcome one. I couldn't quite believe that one, but. All good. Coupled with the Milan win, we're now 3 points off fourth, and you've got Atalanta away at Roma this weekend, and of course we've got Milan Inter, which we'll get into shortly. But it's all looking
Lovely those weekends, aren't they? They're always just so nice. When you it just feels like momentum's with you. All of a sudden, anything's achievable. You start looking, can we catch Juve maybe? It's one of those, you just start getting overexcited. But you've got to capitalise. If people around you dropping points, there's no point. There's no benefit if you don't go and do your job. So that was the positive thing from you guys. That you went out and obviously gave a thumping, and everything else went the way. So happy days.
Absolutely. And just to be my sort of negative self, it winds me up even more, the Pescara result now, just to think that those were two really bad points dropped. Fingers crossed they don't come back to haunt us, but we'll have to wait and see. One of the other big talking points this week has been Montella's future, and he came out and spoke about it this week with regards to how the ownership could affect him. I'll just read that quote for you first. I know at this stage of the season there are many rumours. With a change of ownership, we'll need to get to know each other better. I do hope to continue coaching Milan, but it will depend on many situations. I'm happy at Milan, and if the right conditions are present, I'd be very happy to continue here. I don't know what the new owners think of me, so we'll have to talk about that. Jace, I'll come to you with this. There's rumours of Mancini being linked with the job again. He's sort of a very favourable choice with the Chinese owners, apparently. We have spoken about this before, and I think it's kind of, especially considering what Montella's done with the team this season, it's more damaging, I think, to replace him and look elsewhere now. I think the owners, if they're serious and they want to build a project, they should give Montella the time to sort of continue the work that he's done this year. Is that something you'd go along with, or do you think new owners, they've got to make their own big decisions and bring in people they're happy with to be successful in the long term?
No, I think Montella's is doing well, and as I was saying, guys, if it isn't broke, no need to fix it. So I can understand why they'd want to bring in their own man, so to speak. You see it happen at clubs all the time. New ownership, and they've already got their mind set on who they want to be their manager. So regardless of how the incumbent manager's doing, they will just chop and change. But I think that could be very harmful. As you say, there's a lot of young players there that have come up under Montella, and Montella has put a lot of faith in them. And I think to bring in a manager like Mancini, although he is a good manager and has achieved quite a lot in his career, I think it could be damaging to them. I think, I see what you're saying about, it's better for them to stick with Montella, but I just think, especially with Chinese owners, you aren't 100% necessarily, that clued up on European football. They might just see a big name like Mancini and think, we're trying to make AC a big club again. Let's get the big man Roberto in.
Yeah, it is a fear. I'm not going to lie. I think, especially that like exactly what you said. I just think it's almost like the easy option for them to kind of stamp their mark and say, let's get a high-profile manager in and start our new era. But I think we've rattled through so many coaches over the last couple of years that we've finally got a bit of sort of momentum and just overall improvement and a bit of trust between the players and the manager, and they know what their roles are and what they're doing. To see that sort of consistency broken up would be a massive, massive disappointment for me, I think. But Jack, what would you go along with? Do you see the argument for the owners bringing their manager, or does Montella get your vote of confidence?
It's always tough, isn't it? Because you don't quite know the aspirations and sort of the demands that these new owners are going to do. Mancini, it's almost as surefire thing as you can sort of get in this era. But it stinks to me of he'll come in and he'll either do well first year and maybe, set new lofty heights. But I can just see it being a 2-year, 3-year sort of appointment. It's just got that written all over it. Either he'll come in, as I said, do quite well, but then expectations will go through the roof and he'll fail. Or he comes in and you don't see this giant leap forward that, the new owners might be expecting. And with a high value appointment like that would be demanding, really. And again, he'll be gone within 6 months, a year, or 18 months or so. So I just don't think that actually brings you any closer to finding this stable path forward that you're looking for. So I definitely think you stick with Montella. I think, you've just won 4 at home on the bounce. You as you said, you're sort of pretty close to the 4th place. You've got a young team that he's doing a lot with the resources he has, and it's not perfect. He's not blowing people's socks off, I don't think, and showing that he's this tactical genius that's deserves to go to to the next stage or anything. But at the same time, I think he really suits where you're at the club, and certainly should be given another window or two to try and maybe with a bit extra cash to try and mould the team that he wants as well. I bet he's got a vision of it. But as you said, it's just so hard until those first couple of press conferences and the first few weeks and whatnot. It's tough to tell exactly what their aspirations are, and that might give a better idea of who's the right person to take it forward.
Yeah, true. Well, I think you make a valid point in that he hasn't even had a single, in the sense that he's been very limited in the transfer windows, the two that he's been in charge of. The money's not been there for him to go out and sort of have his pick of who he wants to strengthen his squad. It's been a case of, we haven't really got a budget, so we're going to try and scrounge what we can together. So pick out of this little pool over here. But yeah, I think he definitely deserves, a season, if you like, under the new ownership to kind of prove whether to them specifically if he can take the job and continue to push them forward. But yeah, it'd be very disappointing. Jace, are there any other sort of coaches that you can think of that might be in contention for this kind of job? Again, I'm not sort of promoting Montella getting replaced. I'm very much Team Montella, but if there is a change and it's not Mancini, is there anybody else that stands out around Europe for you?
Well, hopefully, Mr. Wenger will be unemployed in the summer, so you can take him if you want. No, I think you got Enrique. Is going to be leaving Barcelona, who he has managed in Serie A before, obviously with Roma. I don't know. Obviously, it's been a bad night for him, but he did achieve some good things with Barcelona, that Barcelona team, and like I said, he knows the league. In terms of young players, young managers, none spring to mind. But I think it's probably best, if you're gonna stray from Montella, to go for an experienced man. And I think someone like, again, Enrique, who you could realistically get, I think would probably be the best bet, I reckon.
Yeah. Fair point. Jack, any chance of Pochettino? Or who else could be in the running?
Don't think Poch is leaving anytime soon. Well, I certainly hope not. I think, as we spoke about on the sort of, when we talk about transfers with Milan, you have got a fairly good bargaining chip in terms of your Milan. A lot of managers will say that that's one of the premier clubs in Europe to go to. I think a lot of them will want to know, obviously, again, like we keep talking about, the setup of the board and the ownership. But I think there's some interesting names. Yeah, Luis Enrique kind of makes a bit of sense. I guess keeping the Roma sort of tone. I don't know if Spalletti would be any interest. I think he's out of contract in the summer. But a couple of names that I sort of thought of. Laurent Blanc, he's been out from PSG. He's out of management at the moment. And if we're talking about sort of a bit more experience and a little bit more know-how, he's obviously won plenty, proven winner over at PSG and such. So he's out of job at the moment. So he could be a potential name. But then if you want to go maybe still down a little bit more of the sort of youthful, you've got sort of Ralph Hasenhüttl over at RB Leipzig, who are doing unbelievable things over in Germany at the moment. And I'm pretty sure you could tempt him away from there if but be in Milan and such. And a name, I know Jace really rates him as well, and I think yourself do. But the guy over at Seville, George Sampaoli, is it?
Yeah, Sampaoli. Yeah.
And I know, again, there's rumours that he might be aiming for the very top sort of jobs, your Barcelonas and potentially an Arsenal and such. But I don't personally see him going to one of those. And again, Sevilla doing well, but I think Milan, the stature of Milan is a bigger bit of cheese than Seville, as it were. And he could be someone because, again, you could catch him at the right time. Seems to be right, on the up on the trajectory, and seems to have a real way to motivate players that are usually 6 and 7s out of 10s up to 8 and 9 out of 10s, which is exactly what you need. I think you need that person that can just milk every last drop out of their players and really get the best out of him. So maybe, again, it's not guaranteed he's at a club at the moment, but I think if you're going to make a move, that's the sort of move that I think would be a bit more exciting than, as I said, going to your sort of standard Mancini route.
Definitely. No, it's a very intriguing option. But we will have to wait and see whether or not.
If Mancini, did was appointed, would there be a backlash? Seeing as he was ex-Inter manager, or would that not matter?
I think there would be to an extent. I don't think it would be to the point of sort of absolute craziness from the supporters. But yeah, I'm sure there would be some sort of repercussion for that appointment. But overall, I'm not quite sure. I don't think it would be major. Not from my point of view personally, anyway. I think it's not like he's sort of that deep rooted with the rivalry that it would upset me. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of aspect of it. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I'll reiterate that Montella is my choice. I hope he does stay, even those quotes weren't the most reassuring. But fingers crossed they have their little chat and he gets his future sorted.
I did see as well that Mancini came out recently and said he doesn't know what the direction of Inter Milan is and where they're going and such. And you kind of think, is he saying some bad stuff there to win the Milan people over? So when he does join, they can instantly point back to those quotes and try and get him on board. It's I love reading too much into little things like that. So
might be onto there's something, Jack. I don't know. Robert's a clever man, but speaking of the takeover, then boys, I think we're finally at a point now where it's actually going to happen. You'll be happy to know. We've got
the countdown clock is at 3 days.
We've got people in Milan, in Italy, sort of in discussions to kind of seal the closing of the takeover for Friday. I'm kind of torn on it. I'm a bit scared, I'm a bit excited, but all in all, I think it's the necessary step, which is what I've kind of spoken about in previous podcasts, but obviously comes with the sort of caution that we've spoken about regarding the actual owners and them, how deep their pockets are and all the question marks that have been raised over the takeover. But it's going to happen, so let's see how we get on, and obviously combine that with the Milan Derby this weekend. So we've got quite ourselves a week in front of us, which is hopefully all very positive. But I assume you're both going to be tuning in for the Milan Derby this weekend.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice little brunch time. Is it Saturday?
It is. So early start for you. We've got. I think they've kind of changed it to cater for the Chinese market, because obviously the Sunning Group are in charge over at Inter as well, and then obviously with this takeover, people have sort of assumed that it's kind of a move to satisfy them as well.
Mate, they just want to do their Easter egg hunt afterwards, isn't it?
But so early start. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't think Milan have got a very good record in the early games on a Sunday, especially. Fingers crossed that doesn't become an issue. Be awake for kickoff, but no, all good. Keys to the game, fellas, pretty simple. I've kind of broken it down to three things. A, keeping Icardi quiet. I think he is the main threat for Inter. Shut him down from Romagnoli's point of view, whether it's Paletta or Zapata. Just keep him quiet and you give yourselves a great chance of winning the game. Spoken a lot about the midfield this season, whether it's going to be Sosa or Locatelli in that deep role, whether it's Kuchka, Pasalic, Fernandes even possibly, whoever it is, doesn't matter. Midfield battle is absolutely crucial. Got to set the tempo of the game. Got to get a foot stuck in and sort of take the game to Inter. So I think that's absolutely vital. And then it comes down to the front three, whether or not they can go out and win the game for us. We've seen what Suso can do at the weekend. He was, I think he scored twice in the first derby earlier this season, so he'll obviously relish another chance at taking on Inter. Fingers crossed he does the business. Then it comes down to Deulofeu and Bacca, whether or not they're going to show that sort of quality and composure in the final third to get us all 3 points. I'd like to think they will. Comes again with Bacca, it's a sense of this is your moment. I'm not expecting him to kind of do anything that he doesn't already do. If those chances come, he's got to put them away. And the same goes for Deulofeu. I think he'll be a threat, but he's got to make that big difference in the big games like this. So,
yeah,
quietly confident, especially after that Inter loss at Crotone and our win over Palermo. So momentum's going with us, but fingers crossed.
I think it's important that you're now above them in the table. I think that's going to be, as you said, a massive confidence boost. The only thing to fear, I think, obviously Milan losing such a vital game, they're going to want to. As an Inter, sorry, losing such a vital game, they're going to want to bounce back. So
Yeah.
it's the only thing to be wary of, I think.
No, definitely a good point. I think I am expecting a reaction. Got to expect one, especially for such a big game, but we shall see. 3 points. It's all about the 3 points. I think I said before the Palermo game that I don't actually care about performances between now and the end of the season. It's all about just winning games, getting that 4th or 5th spot, and wrapping this season up and then building from there. But this obviously takes on a special sort of circumstance with the derby, so performance will be lovely as well. All right, good stuff. And then just to wrap us up with regards to Milan, I've got some Twitter questions. It's something we covered previously, but at Chuck U Farley asked, do Barca want Deulofeu back, and will Milan do their part in terms of getting him to stay permanently? We've spoken about it before. I think Barcelona will exercise that clause. I think it's 12 million euros. Based on tonight's performance, who knows? He might be starting for the next season. But I think it's more a case of they'll exercise it and then sort of hold clubs like Milan to ransom, who probably will want him back, but just to kind of buy him back and then sell him on for a profit. Jack, do you see him having a future at Barca, or do you echo that point that he'll probably go back and then be moved on again?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. It looks like it's happening, doesn't it? The more the more you see on the web in terms of it all seems to indicate that Barca are going to utilise that element of the deal. So yeah, I can see him going back, but as I've said before, I can't see him making too much of an impact. So he might stay there for 6 months. They might just try him out and just see, and then he'll probably go on in the January market, as you said, for a bit more cash and so forth. Which frustrating, but you can't really blame Barca for that. It's logical business, isn't it? And such. It's just a shame that Milan didn't have a bit more of a say in if you also sort of had the opportunity to match that, the 12 million sort of buy. Yeah. At least then the player could have made the decision and such. But no, unfortunately, you've not been dealt a very kind hand there. So I definitely see him going back. And as I said, I think by summer of 2018, I imagine he'll be at a different club altogether.
Yep, can see that. Jace, do you echo that?
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I think the only thing that Milan could do is probably approach Barca now with a potential deal and say, if you want to buy him back, we'll have him off you straight away for X amount, or if you want to buy him back and then maybe loan him direct to us for another season. Because, like you say, Barca getting a new manager, we don't know whether or not he'll be starting, whether or not the new manager will be keen on him or not. But I think the way it works over there, I think the president at Barca is probably definitely looking at him and thinking, we're buying him back. It's whether or not, like you say, he'll be in the team next year. But I think from an AC point of view, they need to be doing things now to kind of prepare for this. If that involves speaking to Deulofeu himself, making sure that he wants to stay, and then maybe approaching Barcelona with some sort of potential deal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think there have been rumours. I'm not, sort of sure how certain they are, but there has been talk that Galliani's been on to Barcelona to kind of initiate conversation, if you like, about what's going to happen once he returns, and if there's a sort of possibility of Milan return as well. So yeah, fingers crossed for that. But he's got plenty more to prove as well between now and the end of the season. So hopefully he makes that sort of a non-question whether or not he is going to come back. And then the last question was from a friend of the show, Stefano, who's back. He would like to know whether I am a fan of the formation and tactics of Montella, and for the derby, should he play Bacca or Lapadula? Formation and tactics-wise, I think it suits the team. I think the personnel's not always great. Certain players, if I'm going to name names, I think Bacca's one. Pasalic, even though he's got a knack of scoring goals, I'm still not completely sold on him. I think my issue is more of a personnel thing rather than a formation of tactics. I think the 4-3-3 suits our team particularly well with Suso and Deulofeu on the wings, and yeah, I can't really pick many holes in it. I think that's the ideal sort of system for us to play. And I don't know who said it last week. One of you said it. I think it was Jace, wasn't it, about maybe playing Lapadula for the first sort of 60 minutes, knackering him out, and then bringing that backer on for the last bit and show his quality.
Yeah. I think the energy that Lapadula brings is good way to start off a game, and we saw Bakker score a pretty nice header on the weekend. And if you need someone to come on for the last 20-25 minutes and just start whipping balls into him, I know he's not the biggest guy, but he's shown that he is decent. Getting on the end of things and just getting that kind of goal poacher style finish. It might be good just to have him there if needed. Just try and nick a goal.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I don't think Montella's going to do it, but personally I would start Lapadula, I think. And Jack's also mentioned this previously in podcasts, just in terms of setting that tempo from the front, getting about players, the defenders, that sort of filters through to Deulofeu and Suso on the wings. It pushes the midfielders up. Everybody's sort of in tune and on it, if you like, and it's the kind of right attitude to have for a big game like this. And then you've got the ace in the pack to come off the bench like Bakker to, depending on the situation, whether the game dictates it or not, to come on and be the hero takes his chance. So yeah, I'd personally start Lapadula, but if you're asking me to be realistic about it, I think we're gonna see Bakker line up in the starting 11, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, boys, that's all from me in terms of Milan. Fingers crossed we get the job done on Saturday. But I just want to quickly turn attention to Juve tonight. Big win over Barcelona, 3-0 in Turin. We all called it, and from my point of view, Juve are going to be a completely different kettle of fish to PSG, and that strong defence that they've got isn't going to be breached to the point where we're going to see a ridiculous comeback as we did in the last round. Jack, having said that, I think if Barcelona get an early goal, we could be looking at a very tense night, but as you'd expect from Juve, and confident that they're going to go through?
I think they're going to go through. I think it was as you expected performance-wise. I probably didn't expect you to, or expect Juve, to score 3 goals, but I think performance-wise it was exactly what, let Barca have a possession, kick them about all over the field, but giving away decent fouls, not silly fouls. Just defend everything, with complete, passion and they're throwing their bodies on the line for everything. But then they've got class, Dybala at the top, and Higuain was running. I thought Mandzukic had an effective game as well in terms of sort of link up play, but also on the defensive end. Khedira was good. You just looked around the pitch and just thought, this team have got too many, solid players not to sort of succeed here. But as you said, sort of Barcelona can easily score 3. My sort of reservation is against any defence. I think that they're able to score 3 goals, and even tonight, they should have had a penalty, and there's 1 or 2 things that didn't quite go their way. But I just think Juve will get that away goal, and I think that's going to be the key. I just can't see that Barcelona defence, which it just doesn't look to me like when you think of the great teams, I just think that defence is just miles off where it needs to be to really consider them a great team. No matter how good your attack is, it will get found out against these top teams. So I think I could see it actually being 3-1 or 3-2 or something like that, Barca, because again, no matter how good your defence is, if they want to tear you apart, Barcelona will tear you apart, and we've seen already, get backs against the wall, they can do it, but can they hold on? Can they defend? And I don't think they can. And I think real hats off to Juve. I think they've got a really good shot at going all the way this year. I think there's some top teams. It's fantastic, some of these draws in this Champions League, but I don't look across Europe and think they're the best teams that we've seen over the last decade or so. And I think Juve are right up there with probably Real and Bayern, who would probably be the 2 teams that I would say are the strongest, but they're obviously playing each other. So awesome game, really enjoyable to watch. Good tempo. Barcelona were giving it their all, but Juve thoroughly deserved the win, and going to be a really exciting one over at Nou Camp.
Absolutely. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Chiellini's had an absolutely brilliant week. I think graduated from uni with a business degree on Wednesday, and he's got last week and bagged himself a goal tonight, so he's happy all round. Jace,
everyone's got to love him, haven't they? He's he'll go down as one of the ones from our, from this era as one of the true greats, defensive greats for sure.
Absolutely, no nonsense, brilliant defender.
He blocked a shot and it went out for a corner and he proper celebrated it like it was a goal, didn't he? And I love that, when you're like, take pride in what you're doing and it's sort of, I love it.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Jace, is it full house? You back in Juve to get the job done?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Allegri's going to have them set up really well. We saw how organised they were tonight. And I think, like Jack said, Barca can tear teams apart, but I don't see Juve, conceding 3 and not getting at least one. I think they're really strong going forward. We saw 2 great finishes by Dybala tonight and, and the set piece as well for Chiellini's goal. So I think they'll go there. Like Jack says, they'll probably lose, but I think they'll go through overall in the tie.
Yep, no, definitely, I can see that. And good luck to them. I'm not Juve's biggest fans, but when it comes to European competitions, I do like to see an Italian team do well, particularly considering they're the only team left. So
it's been a while since the Italian teams won the Champions League as well, I think.
It has. I think it was Inter, wasn't it? 2010.
Yeah.
Don't want to talk about that. Good stuff. Any other questions or topics that you'd like to discuss, boys?
No, I think that's about it from my side. It's big weekend ahead, isn't it? So just really looking forward to that getting going and obviously chatting about that after the bank holiday.
Brilliant. We've got a clash, haven't we, Jack? Are you choosing Milan Derby over Tottenham, or what's going on?
Oh, mate, that's when this is when multi-screen comes into play, isn't it? iPad, laptop, TV, everything will be set up. So, no, I'm set, mate. Can't wait.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Jace, all good?
Yeah,
any other?
Same. I think we've covered it all. I'm just looking forward to this derby.
Good man. We all are. We all.
What's the derby called to me?
Derby della Madonnina.
Bit different to the Milan derby that I call.
We'll stick to the Milan derby. It's fine. No, good stuff, fellas. We'll be back next week to discuss the reaction to the derby. Hopefully, a Milan win and all the fallout from that. And obviously, look forward to the following game. But until then, Jack, always a pleasure.
Yeah, good to be here, lads. Good talking, and let's hope it's another 3 points.
Absolutely. And Jace, always a pleasure, mate. Say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye to the people.